All good.
Checking your prostate.
He's just checking his prostate. So this is another trace element. It's an antioxidant. Again, we find this in lots of our foods. So we're not going to be depleted. And there is no evidence that we are deficient. But one of these things with trace elements, particularly these trace metals, is they can accumulate in your body. So if you take too much of the trace element, you can actually become toxic. Antioxidants are things you'll hear about. They tend to help our body with energy levels, to help limit the damage to cells and DNA. DNA is sort of the brains behind the cells as it replicates every day. And if the DNA gets damaged, then the cell becomes a bit sort of weird, and that eventually becomes a cancer. So the stabilization of the DNA process and the cell replication is important. But again, there's an abundance of that in fresh food and vegetables. Supplementation, again, isn't proven. But again, you saw recently with the frozen berry issue where the berries were washed in polluted waters, and that wasn't being tested, and many people got hepatitis A. Life's risky. Vitamin D is another one. There are 8 vitamin Ds. The most potent one was thought to be looking very promising for prostate cancer, and was actually the subject of a very major selenium and vitamin E trial, which eventually was shown not to be helpful. So taking vitamin E supplements in a proper trial environment wasn't really shown to be helpful either. But again, vitamin E, you can source it from your diet. Saw palmetto is an interesting one. This is often seen in many of the prostate formulas. It comes from a specific palm in the West Indies, a specific palm. However, there are many other palms that are cousins of that palm that grow around the world. It requires a very specific distillation process, and there's only 2 labs in the world that apparently do it properly. It does have this estrogen effect, so it counteracts testosterone. It can lower your PSA and give you a false sense of security, but it doesn't stop prostate cancer. To draw an analogy of this problem, it's imagine if I discovered a small pygmy mango in North Papua New Guinea, in a small area, and that was shown to help with prostate cancer. However, the news got out that mangoes were good for you. Mangoes were good for prostates. Next thing, I'm now a mango farmer in North Queensland, no disrespect. I'm putting out my marketing that says, we know mangoes are good for your prostate. So suddenly it becomes the roller coaster that mangoes get branded with just, good for your prostate cancer. And there's a lot of this sort of loose marketing by association that goes on. What are the factors that increase your risk? Well, we've heard that as you get older, this condition occurs. If you've got family history, it's a problem. If your testosterone levels are high, that's particularly supplemented, taking testosterone rather than your natural testosterone. If you're taking a lot of saturated fats, if you're overweight, not getting regular exercise, if you're smoking, and some unspecified environmental factors that we don't know about, this affects all cancers. So I know it's the boring stuff, but at the end of the day, those things really are what we're looking at. And when you look at factors that decrease your risk, well, fruit and vegetables do help, but with fruit, as we get older, we need to watch the calories and the sugars because that can give you a bit of a diabetic tendency. The soy products do seem to be a bit helpful. Lycopenes can be helpful, but you can source them from your diet. A number of vegetables, it really doesn't matter what vegetables you eat, just eat a range of vegetables, range of colors, range of ways of eating them. Get your fats down, your fiber up, source your vitamin C naturally through your diet. Give up smoking if you are smoking, and get some regular exercise to help the blood circulate through your body and get rid of some of those toxins very naturally. At the end of the day, we talk about getting rid of toxins, but what we forget is exercise is the easiest way to get rid of toxins. You drink fluids, you exercise, your body has a great way of doing this. You don't need the pill to do it. You just need to move and let your body start circulating and getting rid of the rubbish that's already accumulated. What's not certain is pomegranate juice. Selenium, as I mentioned, the problem is we do get it in our diet. It's rare to be rare to be deficient in our environment. Vitamin C was a subject of a major trial, not found to be effective. Same with selenium in that trial. Vitamin C as a supplement doesn't seem to be effective. In fact, as you look at this as an outsider, objectively, you start to realize there's actually very little evidence for much of what we're popping every day. So what is evidence? Well, evidence is when you actually subject something to a randomized trial. What that means is you take 100 or 200 or 1,000 men, put them in one group, and do the same in the other group, and you do one thing with that one group that you don't do to the other group to see if it affects the disease process. And there have only been 8 randomized trials run on supplements. So the belief that supplement use is effective for prostate cancer is just not supported by evidence. Other things that we do with supplements, is that they can have other side effects. I've mentioned the fish oil with bleeding. Garlic, vitamin E, and ginkgo are all natural blood thinners. And that's good, because if you want to prevent heart disease and stroke, that's not a bad way to go, as long as the quality of the stuff you're taking is fine. But if you're having procedures and operation and worried about bruising in your saddle area, just be mindful that sometimes you seem to take more of your supplements, or you keep taking your supplements right up until the time of the operation. It's important to think about which supplements you should stop 2 or 3 weeks before the operation, because that might prolong bleeding, and that's just a practical problem. So in summary, we've heard that prostate cancer is common. The risk increases with age. Not all men come to harm from it. The dietary changes or supplement use only have a minimal effect once the cancer is present. Once the cancer is present. However, a large Australian study a few years ago showed that 55% of men, upon hearing that they will have prostate cancer, will seek other use, particularly supplements. And that, I think, is actually matched by many of the other serious cancers that we get. It appears to be in our nature to go looking for supplements and then buying something, maybe because we just want to try and do something. But heart-healthy diet is the best overall plan. So when someone says to me, well, I've got prostate cancer, how should I change my diet? I usually look at them and say, well, I think you should just look at what's your biggest risk in life, which is heart disease, and do whatever it takes to get a healthy heart. That's the best diet that'll work for you. And most importantly, don't waste your money. Many of you, when I try and prescribe a drug that is not on the PBS, will ask for a drug that is on the PBS that might well be inferior. And the reason is, well, you can get that cheaper. But then when I look at the list of things that you're taking, I see the fish oil and the garlic and the selenium and the other things, and I think, how much are you spending a month on this stuff, and do you really know if it's going to be of any benefit to you, apart from psychologically thinking, I'm doing something to help my health? Maybe if that's the reason you're doing it, that's fine. But be mindful that you might be wasting your money. So I'm sorry if that makes you a bit confused. If you're confused, that's usually good, because it means you're thinking about it. If you think that what I'm saying is absolute rubbish, that's okay too. We live in a free country. But you need to exercise. We all need to exercise. We all need to watch our weight. We all need to watch what we're eating. Look at packets of food and what am I putting into my body? And if we are overweight, we do need to say, look, I'm carrying a bit of weight. I've got to do something about this. I've got to watch what I eat. I've got to get some regular exercise. If I'm smoking, I really do need to stop smoking, because that's just really bad. How could you possibly smoke and then take supplements at the same time? Some connection's not happening in your brain. But we all do this, and I'm as guilty as the next person. We all do this because it's in our nature, I think. Nada has talked about how we can be a bit careless, and I think it's not just men who can be a bit careless sometimes. We can all be a bit careless about things and not take a moment, perhaps today, take a moment to think about those sorts of issues. So why are we so careless in what we do? I think it's because the advertising industry is particularly good. It's very successful. It convinces us to do lots of things that we would not normally do if we had half a brain. If you look at the Storm Financial story, remember that story where people lost millions of dollars across the country by investing in a financial company that was really carrying out very high-risk behavior. And recently we've seen the Commonwealth Bank, the National Australia Bank financial planners, major issues where people took risk with their savings and lost a lot. And whatever it is your thing, whether it's watches, TVs, electronics, we all get sucked into marketing. The marketing is very good on this. That's just the reality. And at the end of the day, we do stupid things. All of us are capable. We can all, I'm sure, think of a moment, maybe not that one, but we can all think of a moment when we wish we just hadn't done that thing. So this is a line from a chap called Mark Moyet. He is an expert in alternative medicine and alternative therapy, but an academic in that he looks at the evidence. And I'm going to read this twice, once with what he said and one with my added bits. So my rule of thumb is that I do not consider any pill safe for a prostate cancer patient unless it has been specifically tested for that purpose. Specifically tested for that purpose. What I've added to that is my rule of thumb is that I do not consider any pill or supplement, because some of them are in liquid form, safe for a prostate cancer patient unless it has been specifically tested by an independent authority for that purpose. Why independent authority? Because a lot of research is paid for by the company. So the research they're not going to pay money to get research that tells them the product's bad. So the stuff goes on. So you need to say, as an independent authority looked at this data, or is it just what's branded on that box that I'm buying that says it's good for me, with a picture that reflects something that I'm not? So as we come to the end, you might think, well, no, but you're not a herbalist, you're not a supplement guy, you don't know what you're talking about. And there is an element of truth with that. I would accept that. I'm not an expert in this area. But remember at the beginning I said, but I'm a 52-year-old guy, and now I've decided I've got prostate cancer and I'm going looking for the evidence. I'm not gone to the shop to look for it. I'm not gone to commercial sites. I've gone to look for the evidence, and that's what I discovered. And that's also in my book. When I wrote that a few years ago, I found the same thing. It hasn't changed. So what can you do? Because there's a lot of stuff that, gets thrown at you today. Well, the simple thing in life is when you get a lot of stuff thrown at you, you think, well, if I'm going to take some of this advice, I might start one thing and I'll stop one thing. I'll start one thing and I'll stop one thing. Of all the things you should and should not do about your health, maybe think about committing to starting one thing. You could see a dietitian. I'm not saying that just because Rosemary's here. It's actually what I did when I was overweight. My GP said to me, "You're fat." And I said, "Oh, just don't sugarcoat it." And I said, "Am I?" And she put me on the scale and she said, "You are fat." Then she got the tape measure out. She said, "You're fat, around the middle. That's where it's dangerous for you. You need to see a dietitian." I said, "Oh, they'll just tell me to eat properly. I already know that." She said, "No, you don't, because you're fat. Because if you knew that, you wouldn't be fat." I said, "All right." Then red rag to the bull. She said, "Can you do this?" I said, "Oh, you mean challenge? Yes, I can do this. What weight are we dropping to?" So I did, and we dropped. And I found the dietitian fantastic. I thought I knew what I needed to do, but actually I didn't. And that's a whole different specialty in its own right. So for me, seeing a dietitian was a huge thing, just watching what I ate and the exercise. And then stop something else that you do. Stop something else. So whether it's the smoking or, whatever it is you do that's damaging your health. And seriously question the shortcuts you take, fooling yourself that it's good for you. You can't just pop the pill when you know that there's other things you can do that are a lot cheaper, arguably even free. So thank you. Thank the Jim Bruce Trust for inviting me back.